Hello everyone, my name's Anna, and today I'll be talking to you about the Syrian civil war. As you guys can see in the table of contents, I'll be giving you an introduction on how and why the war started. I'll be talking about refugees and displaced people from Syria, as well as the consequences of the war. And finally, you guys will be able to see an interview I've conducted with one of SAP's own students, where she will be talking to us about her own experience with the Syrian civil war. Introduction: how and why the war started. In order to understand why and how the war started, you need to know about the political context and the Arab Spring. The roots of the conflict can be tracked back to the long-standing political, social, and economic grievances within Syria. Decades of authoritarian rule under the Assad family had led to a widespread discontent, limited political freedoms, and economic disparities. The Syrian conflict was also influenced by the Arab Spring. In 2011, successful uprisings that became known as the Arab Spring toppled Tunisia's and Egypt's president, and this gave hope to Syrian pro-democracy activists. Pro-democracy protests in Syria were initially peaceful, inspired by the calls for greater political freedom and social justice seen in neighboring countries. That March, peaceful protests erupted in Syria as well after 15 boys were detained and tortured for writing graffiti in support of the Arab Spring. One of the boys, a 13-year-old, was killed after being heavily tortured. The government response. The Syrian government under President Bashar al-Assad responded to the protests with force, deploying the military and security forces to quash dissent. This resulted in the death of hundreds and imprisonment of many more. This heavy-handed approach further fueled anger among the population and prompted more people to join the protest, demanding political reforms and Assad's resignation. The civil war eruption. As the government crackdown intensified, some opposition groups took up arms, leading to armed resistance against the Assad regime. This marked the beginning of a violent conflict between various rebel groups and the Syrian government forces. In 2011, defectors from the military announced the formation of the Free Syrian Army, a rebel group aiming to overthrow the government, and Syria began to slide into war. By 2012, an array of poorly organized opposition groups had formed rebel brigades, many armed by foreign patrons, that seized key cities in the north, including parts of Aleppo, Syria's largest city. As the government lost territory in 2013, Lebanon's Hezbollah openly deployed its fighters, and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps dispatched military advisors to prop up the Assad government. By 2014, ISIS and other hardline Islamist groups became involved. This prompted U.S. military intervention. In 2015 and 2016, featured Russian military intervention, especially air power, against moderate rebel factions. Russia deployed some of its most sophisticated weaponry and air defense systems. The roles of Hezbollah and Iran deepened too. By the end of 2016, the Assad regime retook territory and consolidated its control over most of the country, including major cities like Aleppo, as well as areas across Syria's strategic western spine, after the Islamic State Caliphate had taken over roughly a third of Syrian territory in 2014. International involvement. The conflict attracted regional and international involvement, with various countries supporting different sides. Iran and Russia supported the Assad regime, providing military aid, while Turkey, some Gulf states, and Western nations supported different rebel factions. This international involvement further aggravated the conflict. Number 2. Refugees and displaced people. Since 2011, more than 14 million Syrians have been forced to flee their homes in search of safety. The total pre-war population of Syria was around 21 million. More than half this population is now displaced from their homes, either internally within Syria or as refugees abroad. More than 6.8 million Syrians remain internally displaced in their own country, where 70% of the population is in need of humanitarian assistance and 90% of the population live below the poverty line. Syrian refugees have sought asylum in more than 130 countries, but the vast majority, approximately 5.5 million, live in the 5 countries neighboring Syria, which are Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, and Egypt. Turkey alone hosts the largest population of Syrian refugees, which is about 3.6 million, and Germany is the largest non-neighboring host country with more than 850,000 Syrian refugees. Refugees first started leaving Syria in large numbers in 2012, with the UN High Commissioner for Refugees recording around 730,000 Syrian refugees in that year. In June 2023, the UN Refugee Agency recorded 5.3 million Syrian refugees and asylum seekers registered globally. Number 3. Consequences of the war. The Syrian civil war has had a profound and devastating impact on the people of Syria, causing widespread suffering, destruction, and displacement. Some of the key impacts on Syrians include humanitarian crisis, displacement and refugees, casualties and trauma, destruction of infrastructure, and an economic devastation. Humanitarian crisis. The conflict has resulted in a severe humanitarian crisis, with millions of Syrians in need of aid. Food and medical supplies became scarce in many areas due to the destruction of infrastructure and ongoing violence, leading to widespread hunger and lack of access to healthcare. Displacement and refugees, like I was previously talking about, millions of Syrians have been displaced within and out of their country, fleeing violence and seeking safety elsewhere. Casualties and trauma. The conflict has led to a staggering loss of life, with hundreds of thousands of Syrians killed, including civilians and children. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, SOHR, a UK-based monitoring group with a network of sources on the ground, had documented deaths of over 500,000 people by March 2023. It said at least 162,000 civilians have been killed, with the Syrian government and its allies responsible for 139,000 of those deaths. The group estimated that the actual toll from the war was more than 613,000, with an additional 55,000 civilians believed to have died of torture in government-run prisons. Many survivors have experienced traumatic events, including bombings, displacement, loss of family members, and other forms of violence, resulting in widespread psychological trauma and long-term mental issues. Destruction of infrastructures. Homes, hospitals, schools, and vital infrastructure have been destroyed or severely damaged during the conflict. This destruction has had a long-term consequence for the country's ability to provide essential services. Economic devastation. The economy of Syria has been severely impacted by the war. The loss of infrastructures, businesses, and livelihoods has led to high unemployment, poverty, and a lack of basic necessities for many Syrians. Number 4, people's experiences, a SAP student's experience. I'll be leaving you guys with a video so you can watch our interview together. My good friend Kausar. Kausar, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Kausar Nafan, and I was born in Syria, specifically Aleppo, in January 25th, 2006.
That's great. So, you're Syrian. I'm guessing the war has affected you a lot. Do you remember how things were before the war started?
So, I left Syria when I was around like 5 or 6 years old, but I still have some faint memories right before the war started, and honestly, things were normal. Like, literally, I would go to school, I would visit my family. I remember one day it snowed, and then my dad made us skip school to build a snowman. It was normal, happy life.
Normal family life.
More normal family life, yeah. And then it was a really tight, close, like the community itself was really like tight and close. Like everyone knew each other, so it was really fun.
That's great. And why did your family decide to move out of Syria? Because my understanding is that you guys left before the war officially started.
Yeah, so the war officially started in 2011. We left around 2010. So we left actually because for 2 factors. One, my younger brother, he died of a heart condition. He had 2 holes in his heart. And then the main thing that made us leave was actually my dad got kidnapped.
Okay.
So he, my dad is a dentist, and he was well known in our area, or well known in our city, because his dad was also a cardiologist. And then, just people know you from your family. So he was coming back from work. He got back from work late, and then he actually was kidnapped right in front of the building, our apartment building, right in front of the building door. So they kidnapped him. They asked for ransom. They asked for 7 million Syrian liras, and at the time, before the Syrian lira crashed, it was a lot. And then they took that, and they took gold, because my dad had gold. He's invested in gold. And then they gave him back to us. 6 months later, we were out, because it was not that safe.
Well, I'm glad your dad is good now and nothing happened.
No, nothing happened. He was so cool about it. He came back home and slept as if nothing happened.
Do you remember how maybe like the war affected your family life, especially those who were like closest to you? So your mom, your dad, your siblings.
Yeah. So we did leave right before the war officially started, but even when we were in Syria in 2010, things were like not safe. So there was a lot of bombings. Like I remember sitting in the balcony with my mom and my cousins, and then we would see something like
Yeah.
flying. And like, oh, it's not a storm. Like my mom's like, no, that's a bomb. And then even my dad would be on the phone with his mom, my grandma,
Yeah.
and we would hear a bomb like in our area. And then my dad would tell my grandma, was like, oh yeah, we just had a bomb. You should hear it because she lived nearby.
Yeah.
And then we would hear the bomb noise on the phone from her area. So that's all I can remember. And also remember the electricity would cut
Yeah.
off a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And also the water. So yeah, so it wasn't really safe. At one point when my mom had to, drop us off at the bus pickup for us, she carried a taser. Just in
Oh.
case. Yeah.
And how has the war maybe affected your other family members? Do you still have family living in Syria?
I do actually. So from my mom's side, I have my uncle, my youngest uncle,
Yeah.
and I had my grandma and my grandpa. So my youngest uncle, he was actually in the army. He was drafted way before the war started. I think about a year because it's mandatory. And he was not on the field. Like he was not shooting people. His
Yeah.
job was to deliver food.
Okay.
But he told me like if the people from the opposing sides saw him in military uniform and he was on non he was on the grounds that are not like controlled by the government, he would be shot because they were
Okay.
just yeah. Other than that, I had my uncle
Mm-hmm.
from my dad's side. He also stayed there. He stayed in Syria, who was actually recently killed last year.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, basically what happened was someone reported that he had dollars, which is illegal to own in Syria for some reason. And they even have a code word for, like, you can't even say the word dollar. You have to say, they call it andouille.
Okay.
And so they reported him. They took him in jail. And then jails in Syria is basically a death sentence. So
Okay.
if you go to jail in Syria, you're good as dead. So they took him in. They asked for money to let him out, which was around $7,000 to $10,000, I think. I'm not sure. So we gave back the money. Turns out that he was killed there, and without an autopsy or anything, just looking at the body, the family told us that he was tortured. So
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
yeah, the government is that corrupted. So.
Hmm. And how else has this affected, like, has your family been affected in more ways than this? Like, I know there's been a lot of death, and I'm so sorry to hear your family has gone has gone through all of that. But are there other ways they're affected? Maybe more personal, maybe things that have to do with food, electricity, other basic needs that the war has maybe caused people to lack?
So my family, we're fortunate that we support each other. Also, my family back in Syria, they have their own businesses and support themselves too. So they're able to buy. I'm not sure what's called in English, but it's not this type of battery that water, sorry, the electricity.
Okay.
While we just have a subscription to get the water whenever it cuts off. And then, yeah, they were able to live. But we know some people, like just family, friends, they were at one point struggling to even keep warm. Like, I'm from Aleppo, and then Aleppo was one of the most affected areas.
Okay.
So we know some of our family, some of our family friends, at one point when the war was really bad around like 2017, 2018, they did not have any electricity. They did not afford the batteries, so they would actually burn newspaper and then anything flammable just to keep warm in the winter because they couldn't afford coal or like wood or anything. So some people really struggled. A lot of people died of colds and a lot of diseases. Like people were dying of some diseases too. My grandma told me. And yeah, it's hard. But personally, I was fortunate enough to leave early. Although I heard some bombings and then my dad's kidnapping, which I only found out when I left Syria. I left Syria and immigrated to Egypt.
Yeah.
And I only found out a year after I immigrated to Egypt. So the war in Syria really it's sad. Like there's some guilt you feel because you left, you're safe, but your family is not safe.
Yeah.
And also just personal experience, it also affected my sleep because I'm always alert. Like it's been hard for me to sleep generally ever since the war. So
yeah. And
that's still.
how did it feel like having to leave your country because of a civil war? Like civil wars is something I feel like we've seen a lot throughout history, but maybe they're not as common anymore.
Yeah.
How did it feel to leave, and especially going to like another country like Egypt? Was it like a huge change? What was your experience like?
So leaving Syria, I still remember. I still remember that day. So I remember packing our stuff, and I thought we were going on vacation, really. And I remember going to the airport. I had this piggy bank thing, and I took the money, got a bunch of snacks for the airport, and then I remember the airport getting bombed
Mm-hmm.
while we were there. So we had to go and hide in they had a little prayer room in
Okay.
the base, so we had to hide there for a while. I remember going to Egypt. The first day in Egypt, I don't remember it. I was so exhausted that I ended up passing out
Mm-hmm.
from like how exhausted I was. As for living in Egypt, it was really nice. Egyptians in general, like I know some Syrians who went to other countries, people were not that friendly, but my experience living in Egypt was Egyptians were really welcoming and really friendly. Like they were
Yeah.
really supportive. As soon as they found out that you were Syrian, that they would literally offer to help you in any way. So it was really positive leaving, but I didn't know that I was immigrating. I
Yeah.
thought I was going on vacation.
Okay. Well, Cause, or anything else you'd like us to know about Syria and the situation there? A last message? Anything you would like to share with us?
So my mom was actually just recently got back from Syria. She visited after 12 years being away.
Okay.
She told me that Damascus
Mm-hmm.
actually was not affected. People in Damascus are living life,
Mm-hmm.
just normal. Actually, it's really similar to how we live here in Canada. But Aleppo, things are bad. Like things are destroyed, like buildings. Yeah. But other than that, it's just we're alive. We're happy to be saved, and yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Have
Happy
a
to help.
nice day. Bye bye.
You too. Thank you.
The end. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.